So a few weeks back, I was getting on the Blue Line at the Damon stop, and this well-dressed guy was standing there handing out flyers. And as I took one, he looked at me and he said,
"My name is Ricardo Lugo. I'm running for the 6th Judicial Sub-Circuit position that's vacant."
I thanked him and started looking his literature over while I was waiting for the train. And what I saw was pretty impressive. He had an interesting background, which he shared later when I had a chance to interview him.
Yeah, and part of that is that I grew up in Cabrini Green, my first 8 years, and then my parents had 12 children.
And he had grown up under challenging circumstances.
But to make ends meet, I around 12 years old, I was shoe shining shoes. I was helping people to groceries at the local A&P. By 15, I was working at the Palmer House Hotel to pay my high school tuition at the Holy Trinity.
But he had gone to college.
Thereafter, I went to Illinois Benedictine College. Again, it was back to working for one semester, going to school, dropping out, working.
And then on to law school at the University of Wisconsin-Madison on a full scholarship. He had been a public defender in Racine, Wisconsin, in private practice in Chicago, and was currently the clerk of the Circuit Court of Cook County. But as I was weighing all of this, something else was occurring to me, and it was this. I basically have no idea what office this man is running for. I don't think Lugo would have been surprised to hear that, considering what he told a gathering of supporters at a campaign event last week.
This whole campaign of people running for judge, which is very important, but in our system here in Chicago, it doesn't seem to be an important issue for a lot of people. And what I mean by that is that people run for office, nobody knows who they are, but yet they vote for them because Chicago is what it is. You know, they tell you who to vote for. So
we should probably take a few steps back here. The first thing I wanted to learn was how long elections for these judgeships had even taken place. It turns out that the question of whether such offices should be filled using appointments or elections has a long and contentious history.
Oh, they're the arguments that have been around since the beginning of the country.
That's Ann Lousin, a longtime professor at the John Marshall Law School here in Chicago. She explained that during the nation's early years, state-level judges were appointed by governors. But by the early 19th century, fears were growing that the positions were being filled with political cronies rather than qualified lawyers.
I have seen a letter, not the letter, but obviously, but the reprint of the letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote in 1816, in which he said, I don't think it's a bad idea to elect state judges because people know their local lawyers.
In 1812, Georgia inaugurated the selection of state judges at the ballot box. The Illinois State Constitution of 1848 brought the practice here. But the question remained unsettled, and it returned during negotiations surrounding the state's 1970 Constitution.
I have been involved in this since 1970. I was a research assistant at the 6th Illinois Constitutional Convention, and I worked a little bit on the judicial article. That was one of the really big issues, was whether judges should be elected or appointed in some manner.
On one side of the issue were those making a familiar argument that too many judges weren't qualified, that the election system had been taken over by partisan political machines.
Political patronage, and you're just rewarding the ward committeemen.
And in fact, it was pretty hard to argue against that last point.
Although it was the so-called elective system, Mayor Daley arranged it a great deal.
The Cook County Democratic Party was headed by Richard Daley, and the judicial candidates he settled on received its overwhelming support. So the ward organization gets out the vote for that person.
They got the vote out. And in fact, nobody would, with rare exceptions, would run against that candidate. There were people who said to me, if they were pretty good, they could make a case to the mayor, and the mayor would say, I'm taking care of X this time, but I have your name on file, I have your resume, you know, I know about you, and your time will come.
The alternative was to have judges appointed by commissions, but strong objections to that kind of a system were raised. Some were political. Democrats in Cook County wanted to maintain their advantage, rather than handing over judgeships to commissions that would likely be appointed by governors, some of whom were bound to be Republican. There was also, though, the issue of diversity on the bench.
This was 41 years ago. There were very few black lawyers. There were almost no Hispanic lawyers. I know because I was just admitted to the bar. 3% of the bar were women. You look at those groups and they're saying we are very suspicious because at least we know an elective system. Yes, we go to our ward committeemen. Yes, we know it's to a great extent a political game. Now, in those days,
But what these minority lawyers felt was that so long as judges were elected, they could play Daley's political game in the name of defending diversity.
to his great credit, he made more of an effort than people are willing to acknowledge to take care of various ethnic groups as they began having young people, mostly young men, I'll admit, become members of the bar.
It should be noted that Lousin highlighted one more argument made by the pro-election camp, and here's how she summarized it.
There's a wonderful feeling of ownership, in a sense, that comes from electing somebody you've known or whose family you've known all of your life.
In the end, the question of elections versus appointments was put before the public as a separate issue during a statewide election, and the electorate chose elections.
So we kept on getting signatures, got him on the ballot. We actually drove down to Springfield with him. I drove down there with him and someone else. We delivered him.
Orlando Lopez is Ricardo Lugo's campaign manager.
So we have a meeting every Wednesday. We talk. We have agendas. So we started knocking on doors on Saturdays. Every Saturday we knock on doors for 4 to 5 hours.
Lugo and his supporters say they're running both for their candidate and against several damaging aspects of Chicago's electoral system. The first is the same political game which won out in 1970. Lugo feels that what he calls his grassroots campaign is a statement against the political considerations that weigh too heavily on judicial elections.
Why? Because in this case, especially my case, I'm running without any political push, without any political elected official helping me. This is a people's choice. That's my grassroots campaign, the people's choice. I'm reaching out to the community. Judges don't do that. For that matter, a lot of politicians don't do that. They just assume that that people should just vote for them. Some candidates are being are selected by the party, and they have political mentors or political patrons. I don't know what the word is, where they owe their political sponsors. This shouldn't be a politically. I owe the community. You know, that's the way we should. If we're going to be elected by the community, we should owe the community. It seems like people who are elected, they feel the need to owe the political person that helped them get into office.
Here's how another Lugo supporter, a guy named Teo Gonzales, put it.
I mean, I do know all the other candidates. I know the political machine and what they can do, but this isn't about that. This is a candidate, like I said, democracy without politics.
There's another challenge to confront, however, the one that became apparent to me as soon as I started to look over Lugo's flyer. Again, Orlando Lopez. Do you think people understand the importance of judges? I mean, the average voter? I heard you were talking about this.
The average voter doesn't know. The average voter doesn't even know who is sitting on the bench now or who's a candidate. Not because of them being naive or not knowing the system. It's just never advertised. This is not a governor's race. This is not the presidential race. This is not an aldermanic race. It's not. Some state reps are running, but a lot of people don't even know who the state reps are. So a lot of people don't even know there's actually an election March 20th.
Every judge hears and affects the lives of tens of thousands of persons.
This is Malcolm Rich, the executive director of the Chicago Appleseed Fund for Justice, a nonprofit focused on addressing, as they put it, inadequacies in the legal system. Part of that work involves voter education, and Appleseed runs a website, voteforjudges.org, that provides comprehensive evaluations of judges running for election, as submitted by a host of bodies, such as bar associations. Rich sees a lack of awareness on behalf of the public as a major problem.
By electing an unqualified judge to the bench, you are potentially hurting the lives of children, adults, people with financial issues, people with liberty issues. It's a very, very powerful position that very few people know much about when they vote, and this raises the potential for real problems in our democracy.
Even so, he's sympathetic to voters, believing that even the most conscientious face a challenging task.
I recognize that it's very difficult to vote for judges in Illinois, and particularly in Cook County, because of the numbers involved. You're going to find in these primary elections, everyone has to know what subcircuit, find out what subcircuit they live in, so they know the judges that will be on their ballot. They need to be able to differentiate between a lot of people running for these offices, many of whom will be found qualified and are running in the same race.
I asked Ann Lousin if she thought elections were a good idea, considering issues like these. How can the average citizen cast a responsible vote in this situation? Can they do it?
It's very hard. But then, as I like to point out to people, who's your county commissioner? Who's your county commissioner?
Well... you mean Preckwinkle?
No, that's the president of the Cook County Board.
Of the Cook County Board. I just have to jump in here. For the record, I did look that up, and it's John Fritchie. Sorry, John.
You see my point? When you get to the local races, which are both the judicial races and the county races, not to mention the aldermanic races, people really don't know the candidates very well. So, right. But I think it's unfair to single out the judicial races. Gee, they don't know the candidate. Hey, they don't know who the commissioner is.
But Michael Rich says the news isn't all bad.
Basically, since 2004, there have been more than 6 million hits on voteforjudges.org. For the judges running for retention in the fall, as of 2010, for example, there were, on average, nearly 1 million hits per cycle coming to voteforjudges.org. What it says to me is that a lot of voters really do want to find out about these judges seeking retention. A lot of voters really do know how important it is, but not enough voters. But it also, what it says to me is that if we, as a society, spent more attention getting people educated about those judges, we might have a more informed situation.
Both Lousin and Rich suggested that the current system of selecting judges needed to be improved. Here's how Rich put it.
I think I would say our current system is unacceptable because there needs to be these improvements. Right now, there's just too much politics and it's too much almost people getting elected by chance or by what their last name happens to be. So I'm not going to say that what we have now is a good system. I think that we are electing our judges. I don't see us changing anytime in the near future. So if we're going to elect judges, we need to work now to make it so that we increase the chances of having a diverse, high-quality bench. Right now, I don't think the system maximizes that opportunity.
In order to limit political influence, Lousin thinks that more judges should be appointed. She also supports nonpartisan judicial elections that are publicly financed. Rich is also willing to consider these reforms, but in the meantime, he stresses voter education. And that's what Lugo thinks his campaign is providing.
Well, you know what, it's funny because a lot of people, because I am knocking on doors with other folks that on Saturdays we're out there knocking on doors, neighborhoods, and people say, judges don't come out. They're surprised that a person running for a judicial office is knocking on their doors because they just don't normally see that. That's why I enjoy not only giving them a brochure, I enjoy talking to them. I enjoy shaking their hand, looking at them in their eye, asking them for their vote. And some people do have questions. Why should I vote for you? Which is great. I love when they ask me a question because then we could dialogue.
Sure.
And then they know you're sincere. If they could get a sense of a feeling of the person.
Last week, I was getting on the Blue Line again at the Damon stop, and there was Orlando Lopez handing out literature. How you doing?
Oh, what's going on? John, right?
Yeah.
Alrighty.
How's it going out here?
Good, not too bad. Is this your normal stop?
Yeah, it's my normal stop. This is
really?
where I met Lugo.
Oh, okay. Oh, you met him here. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
He couldn't get up. He's running late. He's on his way. We're all tired. Hey, we judge the election on Tuesday, man. Come on, vote. We need your vote. Thank you. Thank you very much. Ricardo Lugo for judge. We're going to judge the election on Tuesday. Come on, vote. Thank you.